We're live.
We're live. We are live. And?
Hello,
Father
everyone.
Fred. Father Fred, cue the music. Do we have the music?
What music are we talking about? I don't know anything about no stinking music. A commercial. What kind of deal is this? I got a commercial.
Okay. Anyway,
Hello, humorous to the
I
start.
just wanted to say welcome to everybody. All right. Well,
Okay.
welcome everybody to
Episode
our
11.
show. We are live. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties, but that's okay because that's what it's all about when we go live here at Ancestral Eyes. So we're having a repeat performance and we are welcoming back Father Fred Ashmead, Bishop Bernard Fred
Bernald.
Ashmead.
Bernald.
Bernald. Okay. All right. I can tell this is not going to be it's not going to be a straight show. Okay. This is going to be one of those where everything goes wrong is going to go wrong. Welcome to Mercury retrograde on Ancestral Eyes.
Hello, Teresa. Hello, Jean Jerome.
Hello, Father Fred. Welcome back. Nice to have you back on the show.
It's nice to be back.
Bishop Fred basically was our first guest on episode 1 on a new moon. And we're very happy to have him back with us, part of the family, on episode 11 on a full moon. So,
That's good.
yeah, so it's going to be an interesting show. We're going to get an opportunity to pick up where we left off on that first show and
Yes.
cover some very interesting topics and discussions. So over to you, Teresa.
Yes. And welcome, Jean Jerome, my co-host. I'm getting really better at this. Okay. So, yes, as we left off with the last time we had our show, we had some technical difficulties. Today, it's going to be all about Teresa's technical difficulties in her mouth that she just washed and she can't do anything with. So, we're going to pick up from where I think I remember the last time you were on our show, Father Fred. But just to do a quick recap, we got on to how you came about to be on your spiritual path. So could you give us a quick sort of Cole's Notes condensed version of that? And then I want to fly into the more interesting topics that I know we like to talk about.
I'll be glad to. For the entirety of my life, I was Roman Catholic. Sometime around 13 years ago, I had a heart attack and was not able to do things for a while. And I decided that I should take some college courses. So I decided to take some seminary courses. And that was really the turning point that that sent me on a journey of discovery and new faith traditions with Mary Magdalene.
Okay. Now, when you say Mary Magdalene, you are referring to your church, of course. And was this sort of a self-discovery of oneself or of oneself and other spiritual beliefs? So let me just sort of recap. Tell me a little bit first about your church and its background.
Teresa, as you may know, I am a strong advocate for women's rights and freedoms and liberties.
You absolutely are.
And I have been of that personality for as long as I can remember. And I was lucky enough to find a beautiful lady to love for the last 48 years, Donna Ashmead. And
she's amazing.
And she really taught me on a daily journey the true values and wisdom that knowing a woman that shares her life with you. And so as I read from different holy texts, not just the Bible, I became aware of the absence of women, especially women in leadership. And always felt like there was a giant hole there, not in me, but in all faith traditions and in the world. And remembering that this was evolving at the same time that our society was evolving. From a time when women were not doctors in very many numbers, were not lawyers in very many numbers, did not have what we would take for granted as our rights, and still to this day don't have equal rights guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution. So, but along the way, I discovered that there was an outstanding, dynamic, faithful woman named Mary Magdalene that learned and shared a ministry with Jesus, and around the time of my heart attack, I became aware that there was a great deal more scholarship than I knew, and then along came a movie by Dan Brown called The Da Vinci Code. And that really brought it home for me. I didn't buy every proposition in that movie, but I accepted it as more of a question and answer. And so I started sharing those views. And to make this part of the story a little shorter, in the coming years, I was ordained a deacon, priest, and ultimately bishop, and founded the Order of Mary Magdalene and the Church of Mary Magdalene, that I call a global tiny church. Our goal is not to own giant buildings, but to reach people all over the world with a new message of love. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yes, and taking that in regards to what you've just said with the Abrahamic religions, which really predominate obviously our North American continent and all over the world, actually. We look at the divine principle here, and I think this is what the Mary Magdalene Church, from what I found speaking to you, is based on the fact that there's this very strong concentric focus on female deity. And so again, and relating it to, if you want to talk about the movie by Dan Brown, there were several books that were associated with, and one of them was The Alabaster Jar. And that brings me to a whole different concept of feminine deity and principle. Father Fred, what do you think of that? I mean, besides relating it to the concept of, you know, being the wife of Jesus Christ, how do you look at that being more universal from your church? Like, what does the church preach, or what are its practices?
Father Fred?
Father
We can't hear
Fred,
you. We can't hear you.
we can't hear you. Uh-oh. We can't hear you.
Nope.
Oh boy. Oh no.
Oh. Says your microphone is off.
Oh, your microphone. The microphone is off.
Oh,
Look.
it says the message is, Father Fred, you can hear me. It says your microphone is not connected. That's what it's saying. The message is your microphone is not connected.
Uh-oh. It looks like he hit the microphone button, maybe? I don't know.
No, it says not connected. So it means something
Okay.
has happened to.
Why does this always happen with Father Fred, just as we're getting into the good stuff?
Interesting.
Very interesting it is.
Take your time, Father Fred. Don't worry.
Can you hear me
Yes,
now?
perfect.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, now I can't hear y'all. We need to do this by sign language. Oh my goodness.
Jean Jerome.
Okay.
Can you maybe message him?
Yes. So yes, we can. So Father Fred, you.
You're typing it to him, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I can see y'all. And can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
But I
We can
cannot
hear
hear you.
Okay.
Please continue. I'm going to close everything down, start again, and come back.
Okay. All right, Father Fred. Take your time.
Okay. All right. Not a problem. So Bo just messaged and said, funny, she just watched the Da Vinci Code this week. So Bo, since we have you on board, what did you think about it? Was this your first time ever watching the movie? Let's see if Bo interacts. By the way, I like your profile picture, Bo. And Teresa does a flip. Here we go. Okay. So let's see what we, okay.
Father Fred?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Perfect. And we can hear you as well. And
Good.
Teresa. Okay, this is going to be an interesting show.
Okay. This is where it happened last time.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Okay, Father Fred, can you hear us?
Yes,
Yeah,
I can.
He can.
Everything is perfect now.
So repeat the
All right.
question then.
Okay, so recapping the question, was rather a long question, but what I'm getting at basically is in regards to the movie from Dan Brown and his association with Mary Magdalene as being the partner of Jesus, okay, and then a series of books I read after that, and the Alabaster Jar, and its reference to women and deity. My question to you was, what was your concept of the feminine principle and deity, in the sense that, you know, with the Mary Magdalene Church, what is it that the church does, its practices, that really focus on the matriarchal part of this religion?
Let me answer you in kind of a roaming kind of answer.
Perfect.
I have always received God as female. Let me explain that. I believe the divine, the creator, is unconditional, divine, universal love. And and I believe that we as humans are holy, every single one of us, because we were created through and by that divine love. I believe that we were created in such a way that we can receive God in our own special ways. The way you receive God and the way you receive God is your unique way of interpreting that love. And so it is from that point that I see the love, the giving, the sharing, the service, the nurturing, as I have received my mother's love and the love of my life, Donna. And so that's a place that I come from. And that's also what I believe that faith traditions universally are longing for, an absence of, some much more than others. The reference to the alabaster jar is one of those examples. Yes, in Hebrew history, the act of the anointing of Jesus's feet is something that a Hebrew wife would do for her husband, but to me, it's a sign of love and caring that women do in the life of their men. And I don't mean that in a stereotypical way. I mean, again, that's through my receptors that I see that. I believe that that in our church, we need to be open to that kind of love and that kind of caring. And we need to go places with our faith that we've not gone before. And so I will gladly open myself up to criticism from anyone and everyone, and not ever disagree, because you are working through your faith traditions as I am. I will share with you the joys that you want to share, and I will grow from that experience. In our church, we're not about evangelizing. We don't need to convert anyone. We will share where we can, and we will hope to receive your sharing with us. It isn't about women or men, it's women and men.
Nice.
Equality in faith. That's kind of the foundation of our movement, not just of a church. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's a long story that I thought I'd tell you.
No, but that's very well put, because that's exactly the way I was looking at the divine principle and how that plays in with your church. But you said it perfectly. Your church is more of a concept than it is an actual building. And it is that building the bridge between the equality of both male and female. So your view, how do you view God in that sense? Does it have to, do you equate it with any sort of gender? I know you and I have privately talked about that before. So if you want to just give me your idea of that, and, you know, and comparing it to maybe Jean Jerome will compare it to how we look at it, or how I look at it, which may be a combination of both. So please, Father Fred, start the conversation if you can.
When I listen to Jean Jerome, and he's talking and using the language of his faith tradition, quite often I don't understand him, but I understand him and what he is conveying, and it's pure love. And when I listen and talk to you, I receive that same love. I grow when I hear about your faith traditions. They are not a challenge to mine at all. We celebrate through our traditions, which are Catholic, not Roman Catholic, and there's a whole lot of difference. When someone says, Father Fred or Bishop Bernal, are you Roman Catholic? No, we're Catholic, but not Roman Catholic. So you're a Catholic church? No, we're the Church of Mary Magdalene. That's the language we humans use to express our attempts to relate to God as we know God to be. And we as humans are so into labels that we almost have to fight over everything. I spell God Godde, which is the old spelling of God, but it's also the new spelling of God that includes women. So you can see I can get in a lot of arguments there.
And you know, Father Fred, it's funny because that's how I look at the divine. When I think of God, and I see the word spelt exactly like you, and interestingly enough, Godde, which really to me means it's genderless. There's no gender. And the minute we put a gender onto it, it is very divisive. Whereas I think if you're looking at a divine in a universal sense as the one true source, as the universe, in that it manifests through everything on this planet, whether it be a tree, a rock, whether it be a bird, a fish, whatever it does, and it manifests in male, female, and not necessarily stick with a gender even. God is a divine loving presence, which doesn't mean the romantic kind of love. It's the kind of love that we're able to tap into. And I think once we're able to do that, we understand the universal truths. Now, again, when we get into that concept, I think universal truths will come out as universal laws. And they are, well, they're universal, right? No one owns them. No religion owns them. They are just a concept, and that is how they are interpreted on an individual basis. That's how I look at it. Now, Jean Jerome, how can you tell us from the point of view of Ifa?
So it's interesting because Edumare or Olodumare on the Yoruba side, in reality, has never been assigned a gender. But because of the influences of Abrahamic religions like Islam and Christianity, more and more subconsciously and through ritual, there's almost a sense that Edumare's gender, or Olodumare's gender, is male, almost like a father figure, right? The creator. But in reality, if in the purest sense of the word Olodumare, Olodumare has no gender. If any gender, it'd be androgynous. In other words, gender, both gender or genderless. So from that standpoint, in the side of Vodou in Benin, the creator is noted as Mau, and Mau is feminine. Mau is essentially a feminine principle. And basically, it is said that as the creator, she gave birth to the Voduns of creation, we call G Vodun. So even there's really more of a focus, a deliberate focus or mention of the feminine principle as being the creative principle or creative force in the universe, based on Mau. But again, on the Yoruba side, although Edumare, in reality, none of the books refer to him as being a male figure as such, there is, because of Abrahamic influences, there's been, subtle inferences that, of sort of using the term Eduma or Lodumare as being somehow a father figure, right? It's also important to note that there are many Babalao, many priests of Ifa, especially in Nigeria, that are also Muslim. They're also Christian, and therefore, again, the pervasiveness of the sort of that male patriarchal, concept within the structure of Ifa within Nigeria, and especially among the Yoruba, the Babalao is basically a son of Orumila or Ifa, and also is birthed by Ibaodu. Ibaodu is considered to be coming from, is the feminine principle that represents the power, the birthing of the Odu, the signs of Ifa, and their spiritualities. And that energy is said to come from the creator, from Olodumare. It is a feminine principle, always, Ibaodu is always defined as a woman or female, but it is said that is that the power of Ibaodu that completes a Babalao and allows them to be able to really divine properly and to have the insight, the imponriamo, to be able to decipher the messages that are coded in the Odus of Ifa. So that's, just to give two conceptual aspects, right?
Jean Jerome, if you don't mind me saying that, for me, it's a pleasure to hear what you just shared. I am not threatened by that. I embrace what you have shared. I want to make a contemporary comment, and I'm going to jump on the United States for a moment. We have a long history of certain types of Christians that would attack you greatly for even attempting to share your faith. They will use the Bible and to shut you down, like they did blacks, like they have done women, like they do with homosexuals, like they do with Democrats and feminists, and so on and so forth. And I will editorially say, we have what I would call a crisis coming in the not too distant future where those voices are going to try even harder to shut down hearing other people's faith, because the U.S. Supreme Court said it was okay for public school money to go to private and parochial schools in the United States. And so the predominant religion, Christianity, we will see great numbers of evangelical schools pop up. And they will immediately do everything they can to shut down Muslim and anybody that doesn't follow just strictly what they believe. When someone says, Father Fred, but really, what is your church? And I would say our church follows the traditions of a Catholic faith, what you would recognize with Mass and the other sacraments, including exorcism and baptism and holy orders.
Okay.
But, and I shouldn't use the word but, we don't impose, or our view is not to impose those principles. We want to be enriched by all faith traditions. And so a priest in our church would know our traditions and be able to celebrate with those traditions, but also be educated and seek to help people of different faiths. We use language like interfaith or interspiritual. And I think in time we will evolve those titles or those labels because we have this ongoing need as humans to find precise ways of expressing what we are. Because we're uncomfortable with someone like me being a holy man or you a holy woman. In other traditions, a wise man, a medicine woman, so we go through all of this. But I think in time, if we're confronted by evangelical Christians saying, John Jerome, we don't want to hear about your message. If you don't lose a beat and you share like you do today, and on every broadcast and every Facebook page, you share God's love, then we all benefit and we'll all overcome the elements of darkness. So,
no, you bring a valid point, Father Fred. And that one of the reasons we both respect you and we love you and we really consider you part of our family, and the focus on divine love and helping our fellow human being to find their way, to find the balance, to find peace, to find that support, that spiritual support, and be true to their ancestral lineages and true to their ancestral history. It's it's very important because really Ifa, in terms of the belief system, is very old, very old. The basic tenets of Ifa, the orders of Ifa, are far older than Christianity. They're far older than Islam, and it is even in our text that like Osakuleya, Osa Ogunda, where all the faiths, essentially God or the Olodumare, the Creator, as the Ashe spread and different peoples were populated and so forth, that other faiths grew from the traditions, the ancestral knowledge and wisdom, and formed into different groups, different tribes, if you will, right? It's almost like a Christian tribe, an Islamic tribe, and so forth. So you will find and this is the difference between somebody who reads and memorizes and somebody who reads and really deepens their understanding of what they're reading, right? Because to memorize if you have a good memory, it's a beautiful gift from God. But if faith and belief systems are not a question of memorization, it's a question of understanding, not just at an intellectual level, not just at an academic, but at a spiritual and emotional level, to understand the human condition and the history of revelation and evolution in humanity. Revelation taken in a more, as you say, Catholic universal aspect, that revelation, the same way we have in our Odul Bedi, that the knowledge, wisdom was spread throughout the world. In every faith, in every culture, there is a pearl of wisdom that is necessary for the survival and the evolution and the continuance of our species. Right?
Absolutely.
So that's those are some of very important concepts. And again, for those people, for those that embrace the word from the Bible in the same way, and the analogy goes also for Islam or any other faith system or belief system,
Mm-hmm.
even Ifa, even if somebody begins to quote Odu, memorize Odu, but again without understanding the spirit, the meaning of what is being transmitted, and with a motive not of love, not of support, not of compassion, but one of greed, control, power, dominance.
Domination.
Any faith, any belief system, any spiritual belief system can go askew.
Absolutely.
I quite often paraphrase from the book of Thomas, God is within you and all around you. Not in mansions of stone and steel, but lift a stone and God is there, split a piece of wood and you find God. That
was your quote.
In the past few days, I asked Teresa about a young woman that she knows well. I think I may mess her name up. Zelina Crow.
Zarina
Yes. Crow. I have seen a few of her posts, and I appreciate what I see in her personality. I mention that because I'm reminded daily in unusual kind of ways how much richer I am because I'm open to the story of people's lives. There was a Facebook post earlier today that said, if you could be a vampire, a zombie, or a witch, which would you choose? And I chose witch. The person before me chose vampire. And I kind of laughed to myself. Only one of those is real. The first two are fictitious stories. And the last is a real live person with experiences. And I bring that up because I get reactions at times because I share love with friends that are witches. And and when I see a post from someone I know to be a witch and it's a loving or inspirational, I share it. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine life where someone that identifies as a pagan or a witch or a Muslim, and they have knowledge that would enrich my life, but I say, because it's coming from you, I don't want to hear it. what if they have something that is life-saving for me and my closeness won't let me receive it? We don't need a world like that.
No,
we
no,
need
we don't.
a world that says, I share the joy of this magnificent heaven with the trees and the water and the sky, and realize that all of that was before and all of that will be after. We,
Yes.
as humans, need to realize that we need to be in harmony with the earth. And
Absolutely.
so I think when some people are finished listening and watching to your show, they're going to either say that that Father Fred is a bit of a nut, or they're going to want to drink some of the same coffee I drink.
No, but what you say is critical, because, for instance, one of the things, even in Ifa, I always say to people, especially young babalaos, people even just coming to know their destiny, coming to know, be initiated, to initiate to Ifa, to initiate to Orisha, that the must always keep an open mind, and that Ifa and the belief system is not the absence of reason, but the enforcement, the affirmation of reason.
Mhm.
And reason, a reasonable person, somebody who reasons, who thinks, who analyzes, speaks as you do. Because it is, inevitable that everybody has a pearl of knowledge. You can learn from anyone, from nature itself, from any person, from any culture.
Absolutely.
There is always, as I said, a jewel, a pearl of wisdom that can enrich a life. And what people repeat the things, but they don't understand the meaning. There's a passage that says, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," for instance. I always say, you realize that the Lord, what you construe as the Lord, or the Creator, or Lodumare, the Lord Almighty God, whatever you call him, Yahweh, Allah, that particular divinity, who is eternal, who is infinite, will manifest through different messengers, whether they be visible or invisible. But as long as the message and the wisdom and the purpose of that message is one of healing, respect, love, it would be the absence of reason to basically dismiss it out of hand without even listening, analyzing, and drawing your own conclusions, right?
One thing, I'll jump in. Please don't lose your place, Teresa.
I don't know if I'll remember, but go ahead.
we can learn from everyone that we meet in some way in life. Even Absolutely. Donald Trump. We can learn what not to do. Please, Teresa, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just accept that, Father Fred.
Teresa's gonna
as a pearl of wisdom coming from you. Okay, so I'm sitting here and I'm listening to both men talk about their concept of God, and Father Fred being very pro-female, and Jean Jerome explaining God in the sense of a non-gender. Me as a woman, okay, what drew me to the craft, and when I say the craft, I'm referring to witchcraft, okay, and even when I say that word, it conjures up some negative connotation in a lot of people's minds, and they have a Hollywood notion of what that may be, etc. For me, myself, I look at, as I've said, if I believe that God is genderless, what is there about the divine that speaks through me as a woman? And I should be able to allow my power as a woman to come forth and to be heard and to be able to voice not only my opinion, but my view on what God is and what that concept is. And a lot of pagans and some witches will refer to the goddess as being the goddess, as almost a flip side of God. And I sometimes have an issue with that, in the sense that, again, and this is just my personal opinion, is because it really comes from the concept of twisting around a concept of how we look at God in a gendered form. And I've said that I don't. But at the same time, when I'm being put into this, situation of looking at myself as a woman and trying to fit in to a man's world, a lot of times, even in other faiths and other belief systems. And I say that from the point of view of a Catholic, being born a Catholic. I wouldn't say a total practicing Catholic. I still have Catholic views, as well as Ifa views as well. But Jean Jerome, you'll know, and Father Fred, we've had personal talks. My fight has always been about looking at from a woman's point of view and growing tired of being demonized because I'm a woman. And the concepts of how men look through their perspective, their already prejudicial lens through their eyes, because they don't understand what it is like to be a woman. I'm a woman living in a men's world, really is what it is. And I don't care what faith you're from and what you may say or what you may do, you'll always, always be looking at me through that lens. I look at you from the lens of who I am. And if I look at myself as the creator, as feminine, I just look at you as my sons, ones who can only be able to try to understand what it's like. And sometimes it's very hard as a woman to try to understand through your lens always, because everything I say has to be interpreted through your lens for you to understand the frustration I feel sometimes. The frustration when I feel a prejudicial concept is being thrown at me, which may not be that way for you at all, but it is for me, because I'm coming from the point of view, I'm a woman, and I'm always having to fight that much more to be understood, or to try to at least explain how I see it through my eyes. So having said that, I look at what we were talking about earlier and how your church, Father Fred, tries to incorporate women into your church, and your views of your church in accepting other faiths and other belief systems as well, and why you don't have a problem with looking at your female friends as witches, welcome them, as well as you look at your other, because you have priests who are female, and you also have priests that are male, obviously. You have priests that are gay. You have priests that are of Muslim background, right? Very similar to what Jean Jerome had said about Ifa, all right? So what I want to know, Father Fred, how does that fit in? Like, how does your church view that? Because again, we've had that discussion, and I want to allow that from your point of view, and how your church, the Church of Mary Magdalene, and how it's a Catholic church but not a Roman Catholic church. How does it view women in your priesthood?
We so far only identify ourselves when the receiver demands a definition, a classification, as part of who are you, what are you doing, at the things that you go through at the beginning. Are you Christian? Are you Catholic? Are you Protestant? It's difficult to escape all of the labels that are imposed on us in life. And to be extremely honest, at age 73 and male, and trying to reach women of all ages that have and do have a desire to be more active in their faith, and trying to identify someone that comes from some type of Catholic background, so that they would be receptive to where we are on a day in and day out practice of ceremonies, but being open to sharing and helping provide services to anybody from any faith or no faith at all. It's especially difficult when you realize that you sound like a male, you have mannerisms that are male, you use the language of your whole life that is male, and you know those things are there. I listen to Donna every day, and I enjoy her points of view, the way she expresses herself, the way she thinks. I appreciate those. But I have no earthly way of delivery or mannerisms or expressions like she does, that I could then share with women that would want to talk with me about their faith. I believe that there are Buddhists, gays, people of pagan traditions that have a little Catholic in them. And they want to, they're women, and they want to be involved in faith leadership. If they can meander through and hear my heart, and they want a place to grow and develop their leadership, this would be a good place for the future. I won't be here for a lot of their journey, but I want to be a good gardener while I am here. I don't know if that precisely answers you, but every day I ask myself, how can I reach women and get beyond the male-female clash, because I can only think I know what it's like to be a woman. And it gives me great hope that we're now in a time where in so many fields of life, women are getting into a balance with men in professions, in spiritual life, in family, and everything else. And that will make our society a much gentler and happier place.
Well, no, I totally agree. And Father Fred, I appreciate what you have said. Exactly. You don't know, but you do welcome. And the fact that they're given a place and an opportunity to do that within your church, I think speaks volumes, and speaks volumes for how not the Roman Catholic, but the new Catholic Church is heading. And it's important for women, I think, to stand up, to be able to embrace that in their own way that they can, and interpret it through their own lens, shall we say, as a pagan or a witch or a Buddhist or wherever they are coming from, and approach it that way. Don't get lost in it. Don't start preaching. Like, the last thing you need is someone to stand there and, woohoo, here I go, and I'm going to start talking about Jesus and everything. I can relate to Jesus in a far different way. I walk with Jesus. That's what I've always said. I don't walk, following Jesus. Why would I follow him? He's a man, like that concept. I just don't get that, right? I can only walk with him, right? That's how I interpret it. Now, Jean-Jerome, tell me, what about Ifa in that sense? I feel like I'm interviewing you both in this sense.
Yeah, that's great.
Tell me. No, because I think it's important. I think we need to address these things. I need to address these things from a female point of view, and how we look at the divine and how it's expressed in other faiths, including.
I think Father Fred and I are on the hot seat tonight.
You're both on the hot seat.
No, this is beautiful. I so appreciate this, because quite often when you are watching on the computer or television, you can find talking heads that it's all about them, not the subject that you're discussing. And even though I'm your guest, we're talking about faith traditions.
Well, you're more than
we're
our
talking
guest,
about
your
concepts.
family. Your family.
Yeah,
Your family.
Your family.
Exactly.
You're part of the team. But
because I know I've challenged both of you. I've challenged you, Father Fred. I've given you an answer. I've challenged Jean-Jerome. Now it's your turn, Jean-Jerome. You're in the hot seat. Come on, give it to me, because I've gone after you.
Yeah,
I love you both, by the way, but
we love you too, Teresa. I'm squatching you. Okay, so if we look at right now, and I think anybody who's watching the show who's in the Fa Orisha tradition knows that, on the Orisha side, let's say in terms of the Orisha faith, Esinibile Odisha, the role of men and women have almost been at par, right? Like in terms of, there was no, a woman could be, consecrated with dosu, with Orisha on her head, same way a man could. Their roles in terms of even, being able to consult or divine within Orisha, in Cuba, especially, was an example of that, where some of the old Orishas, decades ago, century ago, were very competent old Orishas, and they were in many ways considered to be the head of the faith in Cuba, in terms of, how the faith was being evolving and everything else. And I think on the Vodou side, it's also, there's no distinction in terms of a honunga. There's no distinction, because it's based on spirit, it's based on the ancestor that the person has, and their disposition, their ability to hear the messages of spirit, to convey the messages of spirit, and their spiritual maturity as a medium, and so forth, and as a practitioner of the faith. Fa is an interesting area. So on the Vodou side, especially in Fagbasa, because the oath sworn to become a Vodou or a Fa priest, or Bokono, is to the Bokono ancestors, and those Bokono ancestors can be both male and female. They don't have this restriction either on gender or even sexual orientation, because what's most important to them is the ancestor, the Joto, and the ability, the capacity of the person to understand the Odus, and the process of divination, and the process of conveying the messages from the spirit world, again through the system of Fa. if I switch or flip it over right now, anybody listening to this, for the last, I don't know how many, probably at least 5 years solid, there's been an enormous battle or controversy on the Yoruba, Afro-Cuban, Yoruba traditionalist side regarding the role of women in the Ifa priesthood. Most notably, the
Yes.
concept
Let's
of
talk about that.
Ifa and what they can or cannot do, or whether even the concept of Ifa even exists. Again, those traditions, according to many, Oduvifa that come from the traditional side, from the Yoruba side, they have Oduvifa that speak, in principle, have Esevifa that talk about women diviners. There are not many. And during the works and the investigations of Bernard Maupoil, William Bascom, and other anthropologists or ethnologists, the numbers of women priests was very small. There was mention, but there was very small, especially within the Fa or Fa priesthood. Basic reasons of survival. Women were basically responsible and looked upon to be the head of the family, raising the kids. They were in charge of the market, right? Everything was transaction market. It was women that handled that.
Mm-hmm.
And the women's power, the Aje, the women, the female energy or power, was always considered to be a supporting power, a power that the Babalaos both respected, but in some cases feared. Okay, because it was a power and energy that was sometimes to cause clash or conflict. The term that energy, that Aj energy, was often used. The word that's thrown around today like it's very easy or not a big deal, like chaos, chaotic. That chaotic energy is something which Ifa recognizes and respects and will work with and appease, but Ifa doesn't often work very well with chaos. Chaos is something which is the realm of Eshu, is the realm of the Iami, is the realm sometimes of even the Ajogu. So
The
there's
who?
been
Sorry?
the Ajogu, the forces that create disorder. In other words, loss, illness, death, things that basically are game changers. So I must say that even especially in the diaspora, there's a raging battle between the role of women in specifically the Ifa priesthood and what whether the Ifa really exists, does not exist, whether they have a role, or what is the extent of their role. And there are many ritualistic or Odu of Ifa, Ifa that explain why that debate comes out. And it's really surrounding an entity, a powerful entity, which I mentioned earlier, which is called Ibaud, which women and that is universal in all of the Odus of Ifa, within that particular realm of the Yoruba Ifa, that no woman can see that power of Ibaudu, although she's female, by designation of that energy. Okay, that energy, that female energy called Ibaudu. And Odus Ifa said no woman can cast her gaze on. So even the Babalaos who do initiation of Ianifa, although Ibaudu is present, the woman is not presented or allowed to see that power because there are stark warnings of that. So that's in a nutshell. So that's an area of a lot of contention, a lot of debate.
Yeah.
But also it stems from the fact that Ifa had four original schools. There was one was Jisa, which was the one which gave birth to Fagbasa and Abomey Dahomey in Benin, and under the Fonan Way, and Gongong, which was where Ile Ife, basically the Yoruba side, and Abokobi and Ato, which basically deal with Afa, more the Afa aspect, which is the mix of Vodun and Orisha in Benin, south of Benin, Togo, and Ghana. So, long story short, different schools, different thoughts, a certain power that exists, but it has many facets and sometimes leads to different interpretations, especially if you're within that Gongon or Yoruba side, in terms of the place or the role of women within Ifa and how far they can go or not go. Where on the Vodun side, or the Fagbasa side, there really is no, because that one particular entity, that one particular spirituality isn't really venerated, does not form part of that construct.
Teresa?
And you know how I look at all of that?
Let's
again, through the eyes
Teresa.
of men.
Teresa.
Through the eyes of men. Hold on. Through the eyes of men, of course, Ifa, being very patriarchal, is afraid. And what do they fear? And they don't want women to see. Well, what is it that they don't want to see that women intrinsically have? The ability to create from their bodies life.
That's Teresa, right. I was going to welcome you. I was going to welcome you to the world of mansplaining.
Good one, Father Fred.
But I think it's an interesting. Like at the end of the day, if you expose something, if you bring it out into the light, you can analyze it and everything else, right?
Absolutely. And I don't want to get into it.
There is a rationale. And I do want to explain that as well.
Okay, explain. And I want to take it.
Some of those energies, like the same way that there are different male prototypes or different aspects of male. There's man, the destroyer, the man, the one that basically will kill, not nurture, not feed, not support. And there's the aspect of male, which is, supportive, nurturing, teaching, really the father aspect. Basically, not every man is a father, and not every woman is a mother. And at the heart of Ifa, really, there's that aspect. There are
at the heart, but a lot do not practice it.
At the heart of it, that's really the issue. And even in terms of the concept, if you talk about witchcraft, the witch, Ajay, yes. There are different types of Ajay, right? There are Ajay, which are the ancestral mothers, what we call, the ancestral mothers, which, in that are formed Yemoja, Oloku, there's Oya, which have a protective Oshun, they have a protective, nurturing, aspect, and the aspect of preserving humankind, and being a custodian or guardian, and understanding, respecting life. Although don't piss them off, because if you piss them off, then it's trouble. But there is another aspect, the Iyami Eyele, right, which is an energy which even in almost all the Odus of Ifa refer to an ancient story, right, where the human women, betrayed and killed the child of the Eyele, the women, or the witches that were Eyele. And since that time, there has been a sworn war battle between those women, that female principle of Iyami, and the they say the earthly Iyami. Depending, as a witch, for us, from a Yoruba Ifa concept, depending which road you take, right? And that's why, as you do witchcraft as a woman or man, because men, although they're not again, very, very common, right? But they're also what we call wizard also. If you go too much on the dark side, that dark and destructive energy, the ones that are looking for vengeance and have sworn an oath to eradicate humanity, because they look at humanity as an infestation, a violator of the natural order, you know, that they can be quite extreme. Then there's the other side, which can be as severe, but have a nurturing, let's say, more balanced approach. So that is the at the vein, or the thing that gets lost in the arguments and translation.
Okay, I'll let you off the hook, both of you, in that sense. Okay, because I know we've talked about it, and we've talked about it privately, etc.
But Teresa,
I kind of want to. Yes, dear.
This is really very important in a universal way, because over the last couple of thousand years, since the time that societies evolved to the place where it was totally male-centered world, where women had little value, children had no value. And so it's like in all faith areas, we're starting to wake up.
Yes.
And while women are finding their footage and their language and they're perfecting their message, men are starting to wake up also. The difference is that in sheer mass, we don't have a balance yet.
No, so you're right.
It's like me trying to find the message that would be acceptable to women when I don't speak the language of women. And I would love.
And I think it's the same with Ifa as well. They don't speak the language of women. They think they can interpret it.
When you find a place where a woman can speak of the faith traditions like Jean Jerome, but from the language of women, it won't be an argument. John Jerome will state things from the aspect of a male view, and the woman will speak as of her perceptions. And so there will be the contrast. And in time, there will be the balance where they will negotiate the language that allows both to come out. In the Roman Catholic world, women are ordaining women into the priesthood. And they are doing it because some male bishops stepped across the line and said, this is only right, so we're going to get the ball rolling. Now, the Roman Church is saying, well, maybe we'll consider women as deacons. In time, this large mass of women that are already discovering their leadership are going to turn and say, we're not going to step down for you guys. We've got our own thing going. So anyway, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and in regards to what Jean Jerome said, I don't want to leave it in the sense that I think that Ifa is very patriarchal. Yes, it is, but then so are a lot of, other faiths. Yeah. I like the sense that at least there's an acknowledgement of the divine and the power of the divine. Oh, yeah. And I really like the as you had put it, what do you call it, Jean Jerome, the Fa side, which is not really concerned so much about male or female. And that gives it, to me, that gives, a whole different meaning to being able to, as a woman, embrace my divine sense and my divine self. I don't have to get caught up in following the interpretation of the Bible through the eyes of a Catholic priest. No disrespect to you, Father Fred, or Jean Jerome with regards to what traditional Yoruba Ifa followers and their inability to accept Iyanifas, okay, into the priesthood, right?
And to
Because
be
one
clear,
day,
just to clarify, just so because
okay, yes, please.
the ones that are having difficulty digesting, and literally I'll use the word, and I don't mean to be direct, but they're having a lot of difficulty digesting the concept of Yanifa, are the Afro-Cuban Babalaos. Because in Cuba,
Thank
there
you.
was never an Yanifa. None of the books spoke
Thank
about a
you.
Yanifa. None of the scriptures spoke about Yanifa. And really, for the Afro-Cuban, and also some lineages like Oderemo, where they do not initiate women into the Ianifa, right? And there's some peculiar lineages. Others, like Shobo and like others, they readily do. They readily accept, and that's where the contention is, because the Afro-Cuban and the diaspora. So to be fair, it is the traditional. Yeah, many lineages of the traditionalists that support the
Okay.
Ianifa and the ordaining, if you will, the initiation of women as Ianifa. It is the Afro-Cuban, which in many cases are, throwing up every, as they say in Spanish, they're
Thank you.
throwing their screen to the heavens, right? Because they say, no, this never existed. This is all made up, right? So just
Yeah,
so that, in fairness, because the
good.
traditionalists are the ones basically saying,
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for that clarification. Absolutely. We need to know that. And again, they sound so, to interpret what you said, they sound very similar to the Roman Catholic priests. Oh my God, no. Oh Lord, what's going to happen if the women come into the priesthood? Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. What's going to happen to your concept of God? Wow. Is that really what we're afraid of? So that's what I really like, what the concept of being an Ianifa
Jean Jerome,
in Ifa. I prefer personally, accept the Fa. What's that?
Yanifa.
Father Fred, what was that?
What was that, Father Fred?
I love your show. I love that I can drink coffee. Just so that you know, and anybody that's going to appear on your show, you need to come prepared, because I even had my pot handy.
Very good. Smart man. Smart man.
Father Fred and his pot of coffee. I love it. So yeah, I just wanted to conclude that in the concept of Fa and the acknowledgement of women and their divine self is really based on their ancestral spirits, etc. And I welcome that. I really do. As a woman, I welcome that. I welcome the change. I welcome the change as in Father Fred's church. I think it's awesome. We are now stepping into it. And it's like you said, Father Fred, it's finding that balance. And Jean Jerome is opening the doors in that sense in the world of Ifa, okay? And it's important. It really is. Like for a woman, I have to say it's extremely important, because I am really sick and tired of having to quelch what I believe in, how I see things, and to be able to stand up as an equal. It's like that dream I had that I told both of you, when I had Jesus come to me in my dream and I stood beside him. He had no problems with that. He didn't ask me to follow him. He didn't ask me to do anything. He just stood there and he smiled and he liked it. And you know what? I felt good, because I felt as an equal. And I think that's what it is. It's being able to be equal, to speak how I feel about what the divine and how the divine speaks to me. You may not like what I say. You may not like the fact that the female principle is sometimes very chaotic and it can be very dangerous. And so be it. And you should fear. And you should fear out of respect, not out of, oh my God, I fear you. Out of respect. And that makes difference.
Which is interesting. And I'd like to go, because it might lead into our other topic, which was really the concept of good and versus evil, Father Fred, where we wanted to, in your own personal view, cosmovision, your experience, what you've seen, your knowledge of other faiths, other belief systems, and also within your church how that concept and good and evil, and then what everybody's been asking me, the whole aspect of exorcism. How does exorcism work, and how is the concept of removing a negative energy, a negative spirit, how you denote that, right, in terms of, as you say, label or classification. But I just want to say something, because I think it's all we're doing. It's actually the one of the biggest things that has left out a lot of the arguments between Yanifa and this, that, and everything, and many of the roles and so forth. When we look at, and I think this is the very issue. Teresa, we've known each other for a long time, and I love you. You know that you're my friend, my sister, and everything else. But one thing, and I know intuitively you know this, but one thing which I want to, because sometimes I see it many times, women, basically it's a battle cry, right? It's a battle cry because of all the abuse and sometimes the hegemony and the oppression, where no view can come out. But I think one of the when I say about the chaotic energy, right? Whether that chaotic energy, because it's not about necessarily the gender. It's not about necessarily, I'm going to be a little bit vulgar, but that really doesn't matter what's between your legs. That's not the issue, right? That's what my mom used to say. It's not a question of what's between you. It's about the human condition of the person. Because, and that's why, if, in my estimation, if woman or man, you have the gift, you have the dedication, you have the professionalism, you have the love, and you want to bring positive change and support to society, power to you. And that should be the criterion for any aspect of life, any job, any position, any spiritual function, however you fit in the cosmic plan or scheme of things. However, I do not, what I also caution, both for men and for women, if your bout is division, hatred, gossip, destruction, and just the ruin of your community, of your family, and of the belief system, and you doctor or distort, and there are many examples of this, because you're a woman or because you're a man, either side, I will not take that as being, a person that should be in the belief system or in a priesthood or in a position of power. My only criteria is always, because when I look at a priest, I look at a person. I don't look at their color, their gender, their orientation. For me, I look at the human being. However, I don't care if you're a woman. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're straight. But if you violate certain basic laws of nature, laws of humanity, laws of human decency, of
universal
laws, because you're a woman or because I'm not going to let it go.
No, and nor
should it be allowed. Right?
No, and I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you, and that's exactly what Father Fred had said as well, when he had talked about being able to come into the priesthood. You should be able to understand certain universal laws and act from that, and with goodness. And again, everything you already, both of you gentlemen, had reiterated, without good intention, with greed and not a pure heart, there's no point in being in any kind of priesthood, 100%. As far as I'm concerned. If you're going to turn around and you're going to do something to as they would say in Polish, korzystać, to take advantage of. You know what?
Exactly.
Then you're pretty low, okay? And don't hide behind, I don't care what your religious belief is or practice, don't hide behind it, because you're full of shit.
Exactly.
Sorry, I'm going to be just blunt
No,
about it.
and that I am sure Father Fred, I'm sure that's a similar view you have. And I'm asking. It's not a rhetorical question. I'm asking you. In terms of what I see is that you don't the orientation, the gender for you is secondary. What you're looking at, as my mom used to say when she was alive, the material you're made of. In other words, are you
Yes.
made of good stuff, or are you made of bad stuff? Right? If your role is selfish, egotistical, destructive, to sow envy, jealousy, hatred, violence, racism, I don't care what you look like. I don't want you. I don't want you beside me. I don't want you on my team. I don't want you to represent or to be a custodian or a messenger for the beliefs.
No,
You're
absolutely
exactly
not.
right. If someone has a problem with either of you two or your faith traditions, then they're not somebody that I want to spend any time with.
Ashe.
No.
And
Ashe, Father Fred.
And that's in the area of two questions that you ask briefly, bad versus good. I believe that we were all born blessed. Like I said, all holy. And that's where we start. Along the way, there's a siphoning out. I disagree with the Roman Catholic teachings of born into sin. So, I mean, from that point, we have a problem. But good is what we start with, and life enriches us. It's only man, I'll put it on man, that create things that are contrary to harmony and love and unity and passion and compassion. And I'll quickly segue because of your time. We include exorcism in our traditions, but it does not have to be as the Roman Catholic Church teaches. And here's the part that I think is valuable, because we're talking about the spirit world.
Right. Let's.
The traditions of other faiths that have their beliefs about the spirit world, whether there's crossover, whether there's evil, all of those questions. And so we have to bring the Roman Catholic tradition, but we've got to be open to meeting the needs of non-Catholics. And I don't mean to, air quote everything, but so again, it's that balance, the evolution that allows me to learn from you, Teresa, and our friend Father Ken. We've been having a conversation because he's a new priest that he's right now super priest and not receiving the benefits of his other faith traditions, because not every person is Catholic. Not every person is male. Not every person is open. So I don't know. I never know if I, in my big picture way, answer specifically, but but I'm so appreciative of your format and your approach, because we didn't just concentrate on me and narrow dogma.
No,
we brought the whole picture into play, and and that's what the movement that I call the Order of Mary Magdalene is about.
It's not dogma.
I've got to dedicate my days to finding women and men that can comfortably lead in faith traditions, not just one dimensional.
And when you say one dimension, you mean in a
not
totally
just Christian.
Catholic,
Not,
right? Okay.
Not Catholic, not Christian, not Buddhist, but drawing from all of life. I have a priest.
So incorporate all of them.
Yeah, I have a priest in Dallas that works for a hospice organization, and he has to travel around the Metroplex, and he has a long learning experience in Buddhism, but he also is Catholic, and as a chaplain, he's called by older people that need the comfort of a spiritual leader, not just a Catholic. And so in a very joyful, loving way, when he arrives, he's the right person at the right time for that person.
Right.
Absolutely.
Especially in the time of COVID-19.
Right.
The demand for him is great. And so anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say, I get the impression that the priesthood within your church are priests who are able to incorporate everything from their already practicing faith and their life experience and integrate that as a priest and move forward from there instead of
meet the needs of the future.
Yes, instead of swallowing and repeating a dogmatic format that has been already done. I mean, to the point of like, oh my God, here we go again. And all we're doing is regurgitating Catholicism over and over again, instead of being able to communicate, being the right person at the right time for someone who may need comfort in a hospital, let's say. And these are people who are going to administer last rites. They're there to hold their hand and to be understanding. That's my understanding of what a priest would be in your church. Is that correct? Not
yes.
One who stands there and dons the robe and starts regurgitating prayers. I mean, if the person asks for it, of course, you'd like to be able to have a priest that can do that with you, but to have someone to stand there and hold their hand and be understanding, and sometimes to just stand there in silence and not feel they have to act like a priest.
A point, you may not be able to see it, but I have a little altar up on my counter, and it's as a result of a recommendation by a friend of mine named Teresa. And I mention this because I have a love for altars, not Catholic altars or Christian altars, but altars. And something hit me the other day that it never occurred to me before, but people that have windows in their house, if they want the kind of faith leader that I would like to find for the future, it's someone that could see the best place for an altar is in front of one of their windows, because they can actually kneel at the altar, and here's the earth right out the window. And,
absolutely.
And to me, that puts it all in perspective. So I don't know how long y'all are going to go with your show. If you want a marathon, I'm willing to stay with you.
Go right ahead, Father Fred. We're not holding you to any set time. You know,
right.
I mean, Jean Jerome.
No, we're good. We're good.
Do we have a limit here? Can we?
No, we can go. We can go.
I'm fine staying with y'all, but I just thought that you had to be off by a certain time.
No.
We're good. We're good, Father Fred.
Nope.
We have at least comfortably.
We're good, Father Fred.
We try to keep the show around 2 hours.
Okay.
Just because that's usually most people beyond that we lose them.
Well, let me ask the two of y'all a few questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Go right ahead, Father Fred. I love this. It's a free for all.
This question is coming from where I want to go.
Right.
First, Jean Jerome, in Cuba, as I think I know, since 1959-60, the Catholic Church has been suppressed. Now that things are evolving, and I believe it's probably evolved greatly since the Pope went to Cuba.
Yeah.
But in your faith traditions and the Catholic faith tradition, since they were on sabbatical for a long time, do you have kind of a balancing, blending of faith traditions that's going to, at least in Cuba, evolve to something totally new? You don't have a traditional Catholic, Roman Catholic situation anymore.
I will. That's a very interesting question, and it's the subject for a lot of debates and a lot of polemic discussion. So again, for almost now 60 plus years now that the Cuban Revolution, 1959, was when Castro came into took power by force, and has not ceded the power. Although they just basically handed off to his brother, then from brother Diaz-Canel, and so forth. There was a period of almost 30 years or more where all the faiths were not just prohibited, but they were persecuted. Catholic priests, Roman Catholic priests were killed. Roman Catholic priests were jailed. Babalaos were jailed. Olorishas, and it was basically considered to be counter-revolutionary to visibly practice any belief system or faith. Because from the beginning, Castro and the communist regime saw religion or any belief system that could offer a liberating view, or a view other than what the Communist Party was forcing down the throats of the people, as subversive and dangerous. Right? The same story is in North Korea, the same story in Stalin's Soviet Union, same thing in China under Mao Zedong, and even today. I mean, in many ways, there's still suppression of beliefs or any freedom of speech. When the Berlin Wall fell, and basically the gravy train in terms of money and subsidies from Russia, Soviet Union, basically ceased. They needed to find money from other sources real fast. And one of the things they found that could generate revenue was what became a new type of tourism, which was called religious tourism.
Yes.
And so began the era of where before the belief system was persecuted or hunted, it basically became, our daily bread, no pun intended,
Mhm.
because it was a way to get money in quick for people
Uh-huh.
going for ceremonies, for people going for initiation. And on the Catholic side, really, the Catholic Church was under a strict, basically vigilance and control. When Pope John Paul II visited Cuba, there was a little bit of an opening up. But again, the
Mhm.
Catholic Church could only operate so long as they did not meddle, offer opinion, or sanctuary to anybody who uh, possessed or held counter-revolutionary, which means basically any freedom of thought, freedom of speech, or concepts, radical concepts like democracy and human rights. As long as they didn't hold those values or challenge the hegemony of the communist regime, they would not be. They would sort of let them sort of do their thing. Cuba, before communism, the basically the Orisha faith, what they call sometimes Lukumi, Regla de Ocha, Ifa, which was the formal name. Some people use the name Santeria because of the syncretism of the Catholic saints
With the
with the
saints.
Orisha for survival by the slaves. Quite often, the culture, and still today, especially after they liberated things a bit, is what was very common is a child would be baptized in the church. And the moment they were baptized in the church, they would run to the babalao to give him the hand of Orula to divine the future and the destiny of that child on earth. It was there was in Cuba there was almost a, I won't say symbiotic, but there was a complementary sort of coexistence and a peaceful coexistence of the two belief systems. Typical things, though, in Cuba, there was always, the Catholic, and like in Nigeria today and many parts of the world, the Catholic faith or the Christian Catholic faith was looked as more of a symbol of progress, a symbol of evolution, academic, social, ascension, and so forth. Ifa sometimes and Orisha had a little bit of sort of lower economic and social strata. So you would have people that would be very, I'm Catholic. I don't know anything about the religion of the blacks but yet when anything in their life went wrong, they're the ones that both in Cuba and in many parts of the world would secretly at midnight knock on the door of the babalao, the Orisha, the palero, and say, "I need help. I need help."
And
And
wasn't that like the same in New Orleans and with
yeah,
voodoo, right?
yeah, with hoodoo and voodoo, exactly. So
Yeah.
the reality and what it underscores is that Cuban priests that were raised and understood the Cuban belief system and respected and had friendships with babalaos and um, Orisha, Palero, always there, for different reasons, they were friends that took the time to study or to learn. They realized that these belief systems were not, in typical Roman Catholic labeled as, satanic or pagan, but that they represented a spiritual science, a spiritual belief system, and that their function was more that of a doctor or a
Yeah.
natural path doctor than really something that would go against
Mhm.
the universal, if we talk about universal principles or laws, that would go against those laws, that
Right.
they preserved a science and a knowledge and an intuition that was not demonic or satanic or
Mhm.
anything, again, that went contrary to humanity, to the community, to the society, but that represented truths that could save, that could help, that could heal, right?
Mhm.
And from the Ifa side, there are many that would practice Ifa or Orisha where they would say pay a visit to the church, pay a visit to the Catholic, because you need to honor your ancestors. Because if I
Yes,
recognize that not all ancestors were practicing, Ifa or
absolutely.
Risha, that some of those, ancestors would have been, Catholic from centuries back. So they would
Absolutely.
say, honor your ancestors by going to the church, and there was a belief that there was still a presence of the divine in a church, right? That it was a
Yes.
holy place, although it was also representative of the faith that had in some ways suppressed or enslaved or helped to enslave the
Yes.
African people, but there was still an innate or almost subconscious respect for the church as a place and a presence of the divine, which many today,
Absolutely.
especially in a time when different races and cultures are hungry to try to
Mhm.
find the authenticity and the origins of the belief system, they find offensive, because they find as, well, why would you venerate the white God? Why would you venerate the white Jesus
Mhm.
or the but they have to understand that it was not always like that. That there were
That's
many,
right.
especially the old Babalao Orisha in Cuba, had an innate respect. It was
Hmm.
very rare for in the old Cuba, in the time of Cuba, my mom or my dad had met my mom in Cuba, that you would see, an Orisha or a Babalao speak ill or disrespectfully of the church. But
Right. Right.
there was a sense that the church and the Catholic was really birthed from Ifa, and was just another cultural and ancestral expression,
Yes.
right? That manifest, and was another path or tributary to the divine. So I hope that,
Absolutely.
I mean, I tend to go into a big picture response, but I hope that gives a context and an understand or an answer to your question.
Yeah, definitely, and to kind of to pair what you've said, I would like to ask Teresa a
Hmm.
comparable question. Uh,
Yeah.
from an outsider's view,
Hmm.
um, uh, I have witnessed over my lifetime Christians, meaning conservative Christians, uh, demonizing witches
Hmm.
and making witches every kind of evil,
Hmm.
and placing all kind of lies of reality on witches in a plural sense. Um, is there any way to bring witches in present time the truth out in an
Hmm.
educational way that lets people uh, experience what witches uh,
Hmm.
feel or experience, their traditions, their faith, uh,
Hmm.
by bringing it out and finding the harmony with other faiths, just as the harmony that is negotiating itself in Cuba.
Hmm.
Can you talk about how we, those that don't
Hmm.
have a background um, in
Hmm.
what it is to be a witch, and witches
Hmm.
that have to counter all the negative to just
Hmm.
to live?
Okay. Well, let's see. Where do I start? First of all, I think I've already expressed my opinion as far as being a woman is concerned. And my own personal journey that actually took me down this path was simply because, well, I was very rebellious, shall we say. And the concept of just being told from a perspective, and this is me growing up as a child, to be good, to do, the right thing, But when you thought about, or when I thought about what that meant, and it was always to be the good girl, to do the right thing. And I, there's nothing wrong with that, but it was always from this point of view that the role of a woman was to only be a reproductive organ, basically, to bring forth children and to bring forth concepts of the divine through a woman, right? I struggled with it in the sense that as much as I embraced the fact that, yes, this is what paganism did for me. It allowed me to speak, that I have that ability as a woman to be able to look at my sexual gender as a form of expression of the divine through my body, and that it's a good thing, right? But growing up as a child, like I said, it was hard for me to just look at my only role as I moved forward from being a good girl is to be a good wife or an obedient wife, or to get married, to have children. And I mean, I'm sure there's other women too, but for me, when it came down to it, started with actually a high school project. And the project was to go out there and explore other religions. And so I did. I looked at other faiths, and I kind of stumbled when I was about maybe 13. I stumbled upon this book, and it was written by Sybil Leek, and it was called The Diary of a Witch. And when I read that, it really kind of just opened my mind, and I just kind of thought about it and said, this isn't at all like what witches are supposed to be, okay? And how basically the whole word of witch was demonized into this ugly old hag, or someone who wanted to cast spells and do nasty things to people. And instead, what we had developing, or what I've sensed, what was developing within me, is an appreciation of nature. And so I looked at it through the eyes of how I grew up as a child, being able to mushroom hunts in the forest in the fall with my family. There was a lot of interaction with nature. So for me, I looked at nature as an expression of the divine. And I, myself, growing up, I looked at me as an expression of that divine. And if I was to embrace that going forward after that school project, looking at the different religions, I stumbled upon the craft. So it was to embrace the idea that I matter, and I'm at equal par with a man. In fact, in a lot of the British traditional witches or witches elsewhere, they were healers. They were looked up to. They were the medicine women. They were the ones who could bring forth life, assist another woman to bringing life into this world, to be able to conjure up medicine with herbs. They had herbal knowledge. They were the original doctors, so to speak. And in a lot of little villages, that's what they were. So, when I looked at I started to look at the history of what witchcraft really was about. It was really a journey of women and what women were about. And so that's what started me on my path, and how I sort of went from there, met other women. I met other men that were open, and the sense of being open in religion, in a pagan society or a pagan culture that was developing. This was, again, these were new concepts. They were reconstructed, neo-paganism, okay? Wicca as a form of new way of looking at witchcraft. So they took the word witch or witchcraft and assigned it Wicca. kind of lessen that tone and that negativity that was assigned to it. And I mean, let's face it, Hollywood did nothing for the witch in a lot of sense, and a lot of the movies, etc. And when I looked at witchcraft only through the eyes of, let's say, a Celtic background and a Celtic, and when I say Celtic, I mean traditional English view, I realized that that word witch translated to shamanist, a shaman in other cultures, a medicine woman. And it translated that role of the feminine divine from being not just a woman, but being a medicine woman, being a medicine person. So I started to go out there, and it was me discovering shamanism. It was me discovering, oh God, when I think about, wish I had my bio here, but everything from shamanism, looking at Wicca, finding a British traditional lineage that initiated me, I really got a sense of who I was as a woman. And to me, that was empowering in the sense of, you know, not that I felt I had power over anybody. It was empowering in my own sense of accepting my divine self and seeing that as an equal, okay, and doing rituals that I felt were life affirming, and that also not was just life affirming, but that acknowledged the divine in everything. Like when trees, like I've said, you know, we experience this life with other beings on this planet. You know, we've got the four-leggeds, we've got the flyers, the swimmers, and the crawlers. I mean, these are all other beings, okay? Just because we don't understand them on our human terms does not mean that they are any less valid to be on this planet. Just like the other life forms in plant life, you know, and the tall standing people, the trees. I mean, I can connect to that and feel that divine presence. I don't need to feel it in a human sense to connect with another human. I actually really like the idea of I can pick up a rock and feel it and really let it speak to me. When I can go outside and I can hug a tree, I know I'm a tree hugger, but I can feel its essence and how it communicates if I open my mind and allow to communicate with this. And then to be able to communicate, not just performing rituals or whatever, but to acknowledge that there's a spiritual world out there. There are other dimensions, you know, and they're out there. There are spirits that walk this planet, that walk other dimensions, other time frames. And to be able to tap into that is like, oh my God, there is a universe out there. That was what was more empowering to me, is to be able to connect with all of that. So as a woman, to be able to kind of like throw away the shackles of what other religious beliefs were all about in what they thought my role should be. It was so freeing for me in that sense, is that I stepped forward and went, wow, look at that. Oh, look at that. There's a country over there. And well, isn't that neat? They actually look at a woman as a shaman, and they acknowledge her divine, and that she's able to speak with the animals, speak with spirits. And wow, what a concept. I loved it. I thought it was, like I said, it was very empowering for me. So that's where I come from, and that's how I connect. And to be able to connect to the divine, I can feel it and sense it in everything. And to connect with others, to spirits, and know that spirits are trying to help me. They're trying, my ancestral guides are spirits that are trying to help me to fulfill my role here. Because one day I'm going to be in that spirit world. I might be that plant or that rock, and I may choose to transform and be human again. But really, it's opened that world to me, and I think that that's been mind-blowing for me. It really has. I hope I answered your question.
Well, you just told everybody the kind of woman that I would like in the leadership of the Church of Mary Magdalene and the Order of Mary Magdalene.
Thank you, Father Fred. He never stops, does he, Jean Jerome?
We're living in a time of tension. If I have to say confession these days, it's because I continuously verbally chastise Donald Trump. But in the time of Donald Trump, we in the United States had the most qualified woman that ever ran for president, and probably more qualified than the majority of men that have ever run for president. But
Michelle Obama?
Well, no, we're talking about the future now. But
yes,
in the case of Hillary, what happened to Hillary in a simple analysis is the gang of men, I'm talking globally, put a stop to her efforts using everything in the book, including religion and foreign influence. And I mean, it wasn't, what did she say sometime back? A vast political conspiracy. And that happens with women as they grow inside and outside of church life. But the two of you gave great reasons for where I am in my life, because we're talking about the kind of spiritual leadership, the kind of spiritual life that we work for and hope for the future.
Yes.
And Teresa, I ask Donna quite often those kind of questions. How do you see this different than the way that I express it? And she will then tell me. But, you know, as long as I've lived with Donna, I have no way of knowing how she sees things unless she's telling me and being quite frank. Because she's lived in a male dominated house, in a male dominated city, in a male dominated state.
Male dominated society, that's our civilization, is still very much that worldwide. It's not just America, it really isn't. And yet here, if we talk about, I just want to bring this one point up. Hillary aside, when I look at countries such as Israel, who had
Golda Meir.
Yes, thank you. And when I look at England, who had Margaret Thatcher, when I look at India, okay, each of these countries, male dominated, okay, still formidably went forth and did what they did and accomplished in a male world and fulfilled leadership roles and did so on their terms. Because let's face it, they couldn't come in there in any other way, but they were able to communicate it properly within themselves and to go forward from their understanding as women. And that's key here. It's to live in a man's world and know how to, how can I put it, flow like a river and go through all the cracks so that you get to where you need to be, right? That's how I look at it as a woman. But again, I'm using water analogy.
And every once in a while, a really dynamic woman breaks out of the mold, as in the case of New Zealand.
Oh my God, yes. And how could I miss? Oh my God, yes. Thank you for bringing her up. She's amazing, amazing.
And she's breaking all the molds.
Absolutely. All the more power to her. I love her.
Showing great courage in the process. So,
and I also want to mention there is also an African leader, Jean Jerome. Do you know who I'm speaking of? I forget what African country. Is it?
She's a woman that, as soon as she became a president, wiped out all of those child marriages.
Yes, her. I don't know her name. Jean Jerome, do you know who it is? Who I'm talking about?
Again, I can't remember the name.
Again, another formidable woman who had come forth and just said, you know what, we're done with this. We're done with this patriarchal whatever. We'll use your ways, but we'll use them in a very constructive and liberal way. So using that political system to their advantage and really actually fulfilling what we're supposed to do spiritually is to live politically that way too. You're looking for her name, right, Jean Jerome?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, okay. And really going forward as leaders in a political world, which I think we have to embrace a certain amount of spirituality. It's not just about greed. It's not about doing the politically correct thing and handshaking and arms control or arms dealing or whatever, and everything to do with consumerism. It's about bringing humanity, bringing a human aspect to politics again. And these are the women that are going forward in the world. And that's why I'm so impressed with the woman, with the, I forget her name. Again, I'm not good at names. In
the same one you're thinking of, there's a Chief Kachindamato.
Can you do a picture of her? I might recognize her by picture. Anyway, she's amazing. Malawi, that's it. That's her. That's it.
Her name is Teresa. Go figure. Her name is Teresa Kachindamoto. Was the youngest of 12 children born into a family of chiefs, and she's the one who has broken up 850 child marriages.
Yay! Yay! Yay!
Malawi.
Anyway, exactly. We have women like her, and then we have the Prime Minister of New Zealand. I don't know her name. Her name escapes me too. But these are the women. You know, these are the women that are going to be going forward into politics. That's her. That's her. She's awesome. I love her.
Teresa.
That's the kind of, yay, Teresa power. Those are the kind of women that we want in this world that are going to lead. You know, I'm tired of the male, leading politics all the time. Let's get some women out there. And we've got some very strong women and women who are going forth, and we are looking to them as leaders. I mean, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she's amazing and she's awesome. And that's what I think that women really need to be empowered in that sense, is to bring back that spiritual sense, the sense of doing right by their community, by doing right for their society, by doing right by their country. And that has a spillover effect.
Her name is Jacinda Ardern.
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yes. Exactly. And I think that's important. I really do. And anyway, that's all I have to say. I'm all about women power. You know that.
That's it.
I just looked down, and there is a very smart lady, and I cannot say her name, pronounce it correctly, but she posted about the first female head of the church in Africa. I'm going to mess it up. That's her. A very smart lady to be able to share that with us.
Yeah. Sorry. I said the longest serving female president in African history, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, was the first elected female of state in Africa. She initially ran for president in 1997, losing to Charles Taylor. Sirleaf ran against almost a decade later, winning in January 2006 and serving 2 consecutive terms until she left office in January 2018.
Awesome.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ayanita.
All three of us are four of us. All we have to do is listen to one another, share with one another, and we'll open the future for talented women and compassionate, talented men.
Ashe,
Absolutely. Yes. Ashe, Father Fred. And that's what's changing. And we need women to step into those roles. And we need men to be our partners and to help us with that. And because this is a new world. That if anything, this whole COVID thing has taught us what we've been doing up until now doesn't work. It doesn't. We have to go back. We have to go back to who we are simply, to go back to recognizing what's important, how to treat this earth with respect, how to treat each other with respect, you know, and
right.
and going, we got to go forward. We can't go backwards. We can't hold on to old ideas. Let's change those old ideas, you know. And
the United States right now is doing everything wrong in the context of pandemic. We're not addressing a universal problem with a national set of circumstances. We're not realizing that as our populations grow, as we get more crowded, as we have deterioration of our environment, only with universal solutions looking to the future do we make it.
Mm-hmm.
The model of the past, which is what we're dealing with in the United States, people that are kicking and screaming because they don't want to wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're looking out for their own self-interest and not realizing that I wear a mask, I'm protecting you. You wear a mask, you're protecting me.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know.
I think that if anyone listens to your broadcast in archives, is going to see a theme running through it, and that is together we can make the future. We're talking spiritually and actually.
Absolutely.
So,
but Father Fred,
and I think that if I may, that is perhaps the most critical thing, because at the end of the day, one of the reasons we did this show again was to
mm-hmm.
Respect, you know, the journey our ancestors began, right? Which is we look at as our life
model.
But again, to understand that we each have an individual mission, but that mission is not in a vacuum, and that mission touches on the lives and the survival of our communities, our families, and the world. And if we spend more time looking at the commonality and how we can make
Yes.
this world better,
Yes.
pooling
Yes.
on with respect on our knowledge, our experience, and the divine. In other words, reaching into that spiritual, ether, if you will, or world, to look for healing, to look for solutions, to look for peace, rather than petty, things of jealousy, envy, doing bad things to each other, and whether that
everything
be
that divides us,
anything which that can create divisions or cause negative or harm. The world would advance, and we would leave a much better legacy for the planet, a much better legacy
Absolutely.
for our children and all the species on this planet, right?
I think so. And Father Fred, I wanted to say, I totally agree with you. Ashe, absolutely 100%, Jean Jerome. We always agree on those same terms. And I know Father Fred does. But Father Fred, I wanted to also say, as bleak as it may look for America, I look at America, there are some very strong, powerful women coming, and they're objecting, and their voices are being heard. And they are, again, they're the new leaders. There are 4 women of color that I can't name them all, but there's some very strong women that are coming forward, and I'm just like, yeah, you go, because they are now speaking. They're women coming into their power, coming into themselves, and they're working in a man's world, and they are coming and they are speaking and they are strong. And that's what we need, is that leadership. So Father Fred, don't exclude your country entirely. Yes, it's doing something wrong, but out of that, it's like when fire happens in a forest, it destroys everything. Okay. But from those ashes, life starts. The new young buds start, and they come up and they are strong. They grow. And that's exactly what I see happening here. I don't know who those 4 women are, but they're amazing. Okay. And they are really, they're the ones to be watching. They will lead. It is by their example that your country will survive. It has to.
I need to say goodnight to the 2 of you beautiful people. I hope we
All right, Father Fred.
Thank you, Father Fred.
Soon.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Many blessings. Get them right.
Yes, Father Fred.
Glad
Good night. Thank you so much.
On this full moon.
Yes.
Happy 4th of July to you and to our
happy
American
4th of
viewers.
July, Father Fred. Awesome. Yeah. I'm so glad you were able to come back and we were able to talk and be ourselves. And my cat's telling me I gotta go now too. So All right. What's that? Oh, nice. You know what? I was viewers. Yes, I was sitting here and I was listening to fireworks in Midland here going off, and I thought, oh no, anytime now, Zola and Stasha were going to jump up and start barking.
So to all our viewers, thank you very, very much, Claire, to Yanifa Fakemi, Melvin, Carol, Rainer, everybody who's tuned in.
Anka, Christina.
Lily, Christina, Bo Kim, to everybody. I hope I haven't missed anybody. But LeMay, to everyone who Zarina, to everybody who tuned in and left their remarks, questions, narrative, information. Thank you again for tuning into this 11th episode. We're very happy to have Bishop Fred Ashmead back with us. And I think we touched on some very interesting topics, which it was nice to be able to have him back and to complete that cycle.
Absolutely.
Right? From new moon to full moon. So
absolutely, I love it. No, and thank you, Jean Jerome, for being my co-host and being patient and being my good padrino and my good buddy and all that kind of stuff. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. Have a wonderful weekend upcoming. Happy 4th of July to all our American friends and everybody who celebrates here in Canada as well. You know what? I look at Canada and the 4th of July is just one big happy, time to celebrate. Get out there and do things that you want to do.
Absolutely.
Safely. Absolutely. Okay. So anyway, good night.
Okay, good night, everybody. Good night.
Bye. Let's see everybody say good night. That's going to say good night and all that stuff. Okay, that's it. And bye, Carol. Bye, Annie. Bye, Anifa. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Okay. Good night. Bye.